So today we're going to talk about cognitive load and how different levels of cognitive load and different types of cognitive load affect individual engineers.
Yeah, I think the importance of this conversation, we've spoken about this a lot already. The importance of this conversation is to give frameworks and tools and mental models for managers and for engineers and for teams to discuss the load in different ways. And as we'll talk about this, we're going to go through the different types of cognitive load that we don't always think about. Right? We have we've got, each of us has a capacity, and a team has a capacity, and we're often vaguely aware of some of this, when we're doing sprint planning and and prioritizing and what's going where, who's going to do what. We have a reasonable idea, but there are various nuances, because it's not just the task at hand; it's the external factors, and it's this new to me. And you can tell us all the different terminologies, because the different types of the cognitive load, right?
Yeah, and it gives a language. It gives a language to be able to describe. Instead of saying this looks too difficult or too complex, it gives you that language to sort of say why. You think, and it seems to, cognitive load theory seems to depend on this magic number 7 plus or minus 2, which relates to the units of information that we can store in our short-term memories, and that's got a limit, and that limit then is affected in different ways according to the different types of cognitive load that are placed on it. So the terminology for this is, intrinsic load relates to the cognitive load that's intrinsic to the actual task, the complexity of the coding task that we've been asked to do. Then there's the extraneous load, and that's other factors that sort of bombard our cognitive capability while we're working. So it might be a noisy environment, or lots of things in your visual periphery or something. Or it might be the fact that you're having to maintain lots of different conversations and relationships with different stakeholders that you're constantly thinking about, and that thought is interrupting the intrinsic load that you want to apply to the task. And then there might be some research or some code archaeology that needs to be done, or you might be new to the team, and that's referred to as germane load. So the learning that is germane to the task that we're trying to complete. And so those 3 different sort of load types might, when we're doing our sprint planning and everything, and we're being asked for estimations or whatever, we might not naturally think about those 3
We normally just think of the first type, right? It's kind of like what's involved in this task itself. And I used to talk about this a lot, particularly the the second one, about the extrinsic load. Extraneous load. So I used to talk about that a lot, because I used to have all these different forms of communications, different channels, interruptions coming in, and the number of interruptions that you get adds into that, right, from different channels. So we know that so for example, every interruption can slow you down by like 23 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Even if it's just like a simple sort of 1-2 minute question, the impact that has is like 23 minutes. So you need to sort of factor that type of thing in when you're doing your sprint planning. So if you're managing cognitive load, one great thing to look at is how do you, and we did this in my last place, is how do you remove or reduce that number of interruptions, because then that actually then increases the size of the work that you can do. So you kind of shrink one bit of cognitive load so that you can increase another one, right?
Yeah. So that's where it's good to have sort of clear channels of communication defined up front. So you've got a means of anticipating those and managing those sort of necessary stakeholder updates and those kind of things. And one thing an approach that raised this awareness of cognitive load and all of the nuances in myself is from what I've picked up from the team topologies approach. So with team topologies, they're very focused on defining clear roles between different types of team and the primary purpose of that team. But not only that, also defining the APIs between teams. So you've got really clear interface points and protocols for how a team is going to function in relation to other teams in the whole sort of ecosystem of teams. And the whole purpose of doing that whole sort of architectural team design work, well, it's in favour of the engineer and involved in individual teams. It's in favour of helping them to have a reduced extraneous cognitive load in their day-to-day work, which I think that in itself, and there are other valuable aspects of the team topologies approach, but that one sort of impact on relieving some of the cognitive load, I think in itself justifies an inquiry into that methodology.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we did it when we implemented sort of that way of doing things to remove those interruptions and create this. It was more of an asynchronous interface. You could say it had this better. It had benefits all around for all the different teams involved, but one of the main ones was to sort of help my team to be able to focus and take that level of noise, that kind of cognitive load down.
Yeah.
Right, and sort of that's super important.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's also an important consideration that needs to be made for giving people permission to take breaks during their day, because developing coding is thinking work, it's cognitive work, and I think that the human brain, and I might get these stats wrong, but I think the human brain consumes between 20 and 25% of our daily calorie intake, which shows you, and our bodies want to preserve energy and don't want us to think too much. But so software engineers are human too, and need that self-awareness of when they are stretched cognitively, and that sense of permission to sort of manage that and be able to take a break.
Yeah, we're often kind of that's very common in like the entire working world, is to this idea that we need to persevere and push through it, and it's hard work, is hard, it takes a lot of effort, you have to kind of sacrifice your well-being to do it, and it's there's not sure. I think hard work for me is making sure that when you do that hard work, that difficult task, that you're focused and you're able and capable to do it, and that you can do it again tomorrow, and the day after, and it's sustainable. It's not the hustle culture, and it's that. I mean, I've done it. I'm sure you have as well. You pulled an all-nighters. You've done like the really, intense things for a while, and it's okay to do that occasionally, right? But you can only do that occasionally if you're following a sustainable pattern of hard work.
Yeah, I mean that's why it was embedded as one of the agile principles, wasn't it? There's delivering work at a sustainable pace. But then playing the edge, pushing yourself to the extreme, is something that you can flirt with now and again. Mm-hmm. But it's not sustainable over and over again. Yes. So it's that I think it's fun to do. It's fun to push ourselves and to flirt with the extremes of do the all-nighter, and there's nothing more motivating than a team sort of with a deadline that where everyone's committed to reaching that deadline, but we've got to remember that that's not sustainable.
Yeah, and it's not even possible if you've been pushing yourself to the edge of burnout because you're trying to sustain a level that's too high for too long.
Yeah,
I don't think this is the cognitive load conversation is a really good framework for getting ahead and being aware of burnout, right?
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
because for example, if burnout can happen, it might be triggered, or it seems to be triggered by something external from work, like a personal circumstance. But what that is doing is that thing is adding a cognitive load that you cannot take away.
Yeah.
So at work, if you try and pile on your normal cognitive load,
Yeah.
and you have no way of talking about it or discussing it, or it's we have this sort of cultural sort of norm of this is what's expected of you. Anything less, then you're kind of failing, or you're letting the team down, or whatever, if you don't have a way of having the conversation around it. And I think if we can open it up so we can have this conversation around cognitive load, and so teams and managers can understand that hey, look, Simon's having this trouble thing at home or whatever, and that's taking so much of his sort of mental capacity, his cognitive load. We need to either sort of help him out, absorb that in the team, or kind of when you're doing your sprint planning, just lower this is what the load of the team can do at this point, and support people through it. So it's a sustainable approach.
I quite like that because it's bringing a logical, rational bandwidth type of conversation around into something that people might struggle to talk about openly. If there is stuff going on in life, that background worry is extraneous load, and it takes processing time, and we churn stuff, and it limits our bandwidth that's available for the intrinsic load to work on the task, or the germane load to do our learning. So I think that's another value of being able to have the language of thinking about our cognitive processing, and being able to bring it out into the open in a way that doesn't usually happen. We don't usually have these nuances, when we're talking about our work and our capacity and what it is that we can or can't achieve.
Yeah, and I think it also is useful in other ways within the team, right? So if you've got, for example, you might hire someone who's like really senior, really experienced, great at what they do, but they're new to your team, right? Yeah. And they're new to the company, right? Their germane load is going to be quite high for a while. So we often think of this as the ramp up period that people go through, and this is a way of actually really thinking about it, and you always model it. Is how long does that stay high? How when does it start coming down? And you might give them tasks where it jumps back up again and then comes back down.
Yeah,
and it's it's being aware of that. Getting used to the new environment, to the new team, even getting those communication paths in place, right? It's all part of that cognitive load of learning.
Yeah, and while you were talking, I was also thinking of another example, and we, I was thinking of neurodivergency, and so that somebody that's within the autism spectrum would be very sensitive to certain things within their environment. It could be lights and flashing things or movement in their environment, or it could be noises like a ticking clock or somebody's nails typing on a typewriter or something. So to certain people with heightened sensitivity environmentally, and we know that neurodivergency is quite high in software engineers. So that's where that self-awareness and awareness of what people's needs are in order to get the best out of them could be informed by a conversation around cognitive load and all of these inputs and these sensory things that we're trying to deal with whilst getting our work done. Different people have different sensitivities, and it's interesting to sort of explore that as a manager, as a colleague, whatever. Yeah,
and as you said earlier, right? So the engineers, the tasks itself is normally it's quite a high cognitive load, one of the highest within any organisation, because of just the nature of the job.
Yeah.
And it's why I think, this the classic image of, you walk through an office, the engineering teams are normally the ones with their headphones on and kind of like looking down, trying to almost wishing they had blinkers on so that, to remove the distractions, from the office.
And they're often, in an engineer's head, there's probably, like going back to this 7 ± 2 thing. I mean, I can remember you've got lots of different models in your head at one particular time.
Mm-hmm.
And you've almost got to sort of like, those models have got to be talking to each other, and that the answer is there somewhere. And then suddenly you get a flash of inspiration and you go, yeah, and you know what to do. You know what the right approach is to take to solve a problem. But given that you've got all of these models in your head at once, it just takes one interruption, one person, one situation, one Slack message, or one, social media ping or something, and then you can almost imagine them all just falling down, all falling away, and then you've got to get that answer again. You've got to then go through that really hard work of getting back into and getting them all in front of your vision again in your mind.
Yeah. My God, yeah. People I used to work with will know I've been banging this drum for a very long time. Right, the cost of interruptions on teams. It's especially engineering teams. You say you end up building this complex model in your head.
Yeah.
And it takes time to get that context in place. And context is you say removed by any interruption. Could even just be like a sales guy having a call over there. Yeah. It kind of breaks through your noise cancelling headphones or whatever. Yeah. As you say, and engineers have a high load a lot of the time, and I think it's possibly why so many it's going to become a bit of a joke, but why so many tech firms have like things like ping pong tables, right?
Yeah.
It's because need that from that intense focus, you need to have a break and let your brain recover, almost like go when the time is right. You empty your context out. Yeah. And let your subconscious deal with things, and you do that by doing something like playing ping pong or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you come back because it's what's the stats like? You've really your brain has got 4-5 good focus hours per day.
Yeah.
Right. And with the load on engineers, it's normally kind of the lower end of that, just because of the intense amount of the focus and the load that's involved with that. So you mentioned earlier about the importance of breaks, and I think that kind of really it ties into it. And we need to be aware when we're doing things like sprint planning and everything that we do look at the intrinsic load, but we need to and we get better at this over time, but it's what is actually sustainable throughput for the team. And it can be quite hard to start justifying some of these things to like the business people who don't understand the load on engineers. It's kind of say, well, that doesn't seem like a lot. Surely they could do more per day. And it's kind of like yes, in one day they could do more, but over the 2 weeks it'll tail off and actually end up having less done over the 2 weeks because you overloaded the cognitive load to start with.
Yeah.
And it kind of burnt out the energy went.
And we can track these things as well and provide evidence to the business as to what, look at all the context switching, look at all the unplanned tickets, look at all of the stuff. And I think quite a good book on this is a book called Make Work Visible by Dominica de Grandis. And she advocates this kind of labeling of tickets, like look, if it is unplanned work, label it as such, so that then you've got the data. You've got, if you are spending time context switching because of interruptions and unplanned work, then capture that and then record it and provide it as evidence because the reason all of those factors affect our experience of work, the dev experience and our performance, is because of the impact they have on cognitive load, and and that acknowledging that, showing it, having conversations about it, producing the evidence, I think then helps to work in more optimal ways that are ways that are optimized to our human experience, our human fallibilities, our human frailties, and we're not, we are fleshy, we're not robots. We do need to recharge.
Yes, I think it's important as well. It's kind of like the cognitive load is not going to be the same for everyone. It doesn't run like that every day.
Yeah.
You say it's kind of, and so we need this framework, just this mental model, the language to be able to have these conversations, right? Because we've all had those days where it's kind of like you feel on top of it, you're great, you're super focused. You got other days, it's like your mind is all over the place. It's you've got interruptions, you've got something going on externally, and it's like but we chastise ourselves. It's kind of, why can't I focus today? Why can't I focus? We're saying, okay, actually got all this stuff going on. That's actually probably fair enough.
Yeah, it brings context to it. Yeah, and I was thinking it's probably why the Pomodoro technique is quite effective for some people. You've got you're channeling your thinking time into 25-minute chunks. You've got breaks in between, and that you can do so many Pomodoros per day, and that after a certain amount, you're a little bit, you've spent your cognitive load budget, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it comes back to that idea of you've got this number of many focused hours in a day, and another side topic for another day perhaps is that those hours are different times of the day for different people. Being aware that people are different. So it's like you have some people who, best like really early in the morning. Used to have those people turn up really early in the morning in the office. They get there and almost feel like the daily stand-up would be right in the middle of their working day almost. And you've got other people who kind of always turn up late for the daily stand-up because they actually work better at night. Yeah. And a bunch of people who are kind of just in the middle. And it's, again, being aware of that, the differences, the human differences in, how we operate. Not only do our cognitive loads sort of fluctuate, but the times when we actually have maximum cognitive load capacity for us all is a little bit different. Yeah,
it's our neurochemistry sort of fluctuates during the day. We have certain hormones that are and neurochemicals that are more prevalent in the morning, and that changes over the day. We have a dip in the afternoon, and then we're releasing neurochemicals for to take us into sleep towards the end of the day. And although there are different personal nuances on how your sort of biological clock works, but yet we introduce calendars and clocks and divide up organic time into these artificial chunks, and expect us as organic human things to be able to adapt to those artificial chunks, and it's not the case. We have our own body clocks that we kind of need to be more attuned to in order to sort of work at our best.
I mean, I don't know about you, mine is like different at different times of year, especially like here in the UK, where it's like I love it sometimes online. You get kind of these gurus saying you get up early and watch the sunrise, right? Yeah. You get up early and watch the sunrise, and it's like, well, the sunrise was at 8 a.m. It's kind of like taking the kids to school at that point.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So we have different energy levels. Based on that, especially in like these temperate climates. It's very different throughout the year. So it's it's all part of understanding what it is to be humans and humans at work, from focus and the load that we can handle and when we can actually apply it.
I think there's so many things there that are useful for a discussion around optimizing ourselves cognitively based on our limitations and our thresholds that's unique to all of us. And just that it's
it's super important that we understand that we all have them and they fluctuate, and it's not demeaning or detrimental to us. We're not letting anyone down when our cognitive load is down or is limited or is impacted by something. That is what it is to be human, right? And that is okay. And the more people who know and understand this and can talk about it, the easier it's going to be for everyone to turn up at work and actually, regardless of what's going on, be able to feel valuable and deliver and be there for the team, even if it's a lower capacity than normal or their average.
Yeah,
right. It's okay.
Excellent. Well, I think we covered quite a range there.
I think so.
Thanks for that. Some really good ideas.
Yeah, good stuff.
Cool.
Before you go, I would like to ask you a quick favour, if I may. If you enjoyed this discussion, even one little light bulb moment or perhaps a raised eyebrow, please consider just liking this video or even subscribing to the channel. I can't begin to tell you how useful it is for John and I to get this as we grow and develop this channel and human-centric engineering in general. Also, if you're interested in what we do and want to find out more, just check out our website at human-centricengineering.com. We'll put a link somewhere. Thank you so much. Your engagement really does help.